Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we're going to be diving in to the new Grotsmas detachments that both the Aeldari and, of course, the Druhkari slash Harlequins got for Christmas. So, I have to say, I've looked over both detachments, and one is really good, possibly a contender for the best detachment, at least the coolest, in my opinion, in the game, also really strong. The other one is kind of lackluster. And I'm going to go into why I think so. I think this detachment that I'm speaking of is going to be much better when we actually get our codex and we get battle focus. It's going to unlock a lot of cool strategies and synergies with the army. But right now, it's just not that good. So let's go ahead and go into it. And again, some people might disagree with me that it's not good, and that's okay. I don't think it's good competitively, but I think it's cool. I think it's fun, and there's some things you can still do with it that are really exciting, which I will talk about in this video. And I'll have a follow-up with a couple of lists, probably tomorrow that we can build from it and have a lot of fun. Okay, so it's the Armored Warhost for the Aeldari. This is very much a vehicle-centric detachment. In fact, every single stratagem only targets vehicles. So let's go ahead and dive into the detachment rule. We have skilled crews. Ranged weapons equipped by Eldari vehicle models from your army have the assault ability, and you can reroll advanced rolls made for Eldari vehicle fly units from your army. Now, this is a pretty good detachment rule. Having the ability to have assault on all your vehicles, two thumbs up on that one. It's a good detachment rule. There's nothing more to say about it, right? Makes your army faster, makes them able to advance a little bit farther when they do advance, and it's a good synergy between the two, right? Reroll advance rolls, and they get assault. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, the cool thing is that models that don't get fly still have the ability to have assault weapons, things like war walkers, things like support weapons, weirdly enough, right? Support weapons are vehicles. They can now advance, which oddly enough increases their threat range. Now, does that make support weapons better in this detachment than in Battle Host? No, probably not, right? Because you get reroll to hit, reroll to wound is really powerful. But it does give them a little bit more threat range when they need to hit something that's a little bit farther off, and throws your opponent's, way of preventing D cannons from hitting their stuff. So that is cool. Now, let's go ahead and check out the enhancements. Now, the enhancements are where I kind of get a little iffy on this detachment, because a lot of them are just either not really that good, or we just have better things within the army that we're going to obviously take instead. So we first have Guiding Presence, 25 points. And oh, by the way, I think one of the other issues with this detachment, the enhancements are just way too expensive for what they do. So we have a 25-point enhancement here. And again, this is close to what the Phoenix Gem does. Just think about it in terms of that. It's an Eldari Psyker model only. At the start of your shooting phase, select one Eldari vehicle model within 9 inches of the bearer. Until the end of the phase, each time that model makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. It's essentially +1 to hit. Now, this is not that bad, but when you consider you're losing the Battle Host reroll, it's a little weird. Now, you can put this on, I think the best unit to put this on is probably something like a Farseer Skyrunner, but there's another enhancement that's better on the Farseer Skyrunner, so you're kind of competing for enhancements on that model. So it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit awkward. +1 to hit is good, but it's not the end-all be-all. We mostly hit on 3s anyway. I think this is really good on something like a Falcon, something that's not getting, basic rerolls. I think on a Fire Prism, it's just not that great. I think on something like a Wave Serpent, it's not that great. I think it's really just better on Falcons, because you have that Pulse Laser, you have that Shuriken Cannon, and Bright Lance, and this is going to make it a lot more reliable. But what you have to ask yourself is it worth the 25 points to put on a Skyrunner when you could just cast Guide on that Falcon? And there's also a stratagem that kind of does the same thing as Battle Host does, so it's kind of weird. You kind of have these like overlapping layers of buffs that are not super helpful to a lot of the vehicles in our army. So that is pretty cool, though. It's fine. It's good. Just not probably the best. Then you have the Harmonization Matrix. So that's 30 points. So Eldari model only. So that also means, possibly other stuff that you can take in your army. In your command phase, if the bearer or any transport it is embarked within is within ranges of an objective marker you control. Roll 1d6 on a 3+, you gain 1 CP. That would be good in something like Dark Eldar. That would be great. In Dark Eldar, that would be an awesome, awesome enhancement. Why isn't it awesome in Aeldari? Well, because we have the almighty Autarch. We're already going to take Autarchs. We're already getting +1 CP. You can't gain more than 1 in any one round. And this forces your model to stay on the objective the entire game, essentially, in the backfield. Which this army doesn't maybe want to do with everything, right? So if you have a way leaper in your army, it's probably going to be sitting back anyway. And later on in the game, you're not going to be able to use this matrix. So really, for 30 points, it's a wasted opportunity. I think they should have reworded this, definitely. I think, just like the other vehicle-based attachments, I think that not having your Warlord be a vehicle as well, I think they should have easily made this, right? They should have made you have the ability to have some sort of command vehicle that you could make your Warlord into. I think that would be really cool, but they didn't, right? So you can't put any enhancements on your vehicles. The next one is Spirit Stone of Rayleigh, and this is good, right? This is one of those good ones. It gives you lone operative, so it's Aeldari Psyker model only, while this bearer is within 3 inches of one or more friendly Aeldari vehicles, again, any vehicle, not just the ones with fly. The bearer has the lone op ability, which is perfect, right? So you're near your vehicles, you gain lone op. You also get the ability, on a model within 3 inches, to regain D3 lost wounds. I don't know why this regain ability is so close. I think it should have been a little bit farther, maybe 6 inches, but that's okay. No big deal. Lone op is powerful. D3 lost wounds isn't bad either, so that's a win. I think this is a good enhancement for something like a Farseer Skyrunner that's going to be moving up with your army, moving into the midboard perhaps, and having that lone op is going to be pretty good. Now, the next one looks good, but it's actually not that good in this type of army. Now, this is Aeldari model only. If your army includes a bearer, after both players have deployed, select up to 3 Aeldari vehicle units from your army and redeploy them. When doing so, they can be placed in strategic reserves. Now, this is interesting, and it's only 15 points, so it might be an option for some of you out there. I think it's pretty good on certain boards that you're going to be deploying long ways on, like Dawn of War. But I think it's going to be a little bit worse on things like, Tipping Point or Hammer and Anvil, where your deployment zone is a little bit squished together and you have a little bit of room to maneuver farther out. The nice thing is you get to move them into reserve, and it does have some synergies with some of the stratagems that we have, but as I will explain later, those stratagems they don't have a lot of synergy with the particular vehicles that we have in our army. This would be a really good detachment if the rules changed, which is why I think it would be a good detachment in the codex. But currently, I think there's some issues with it. So being able to redeploy your units before also you decide who goes first or second is not very useful, right? Prince Riel does have it, but he's 100 points. So comparing it to that is a little bit, this is only 15 points, right? So it's one of those things where if you have the extra points, you might as well, and it's useful in some situations, but it's not overly powerful. Okay, so as far as the enhancements go, there's 2 really good ones. There's the Spirit Stone of Rayleigh, and honestly, I think Guiding Presence is good too. I think +1 to hit is decent, especially if you're going against somebody with stealth or something like that. +1 to hit is going to be really useful. The Skilled Crews is good. Now, the problem I have with this detachment is not actually the detachment rule or the enhancements necessarily. It is the stratagems. Now, when I go into the stratagems, you'll start to realize why I think this detachment doesn't have a lot of teeth without battle focus. I think battle focus is going to make this detachment way better when the codex comes out than it looks now. Now, what I will say is, I think the detachment rule also rules out anybody who thinks that the Eldar battle focus is going to be assault weapons on everything. I think that's out, right? GW has placed a detachment in our hands that gives assault to vehicles. I think having battle focus or be, something that just gives assault to your ranged weapons, that's totally out. And I think you can guarantee that battle focus will not be rerolled advance rolls because they've already given us that in this detachment. Why on earth would they give us something that is just going to be super redundant when the codex comes out, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I think that it's moving more and more towards battle focus is going to be an army-wide D6 move with some limitations, or it's going to be something where you pick 3 units or pick 2 units, whatever, and you move them 6 inches after you shoot with some restrictions. Like you can't charge after, you can't advance. I can't see a scenario where that would be something that GW would do. But yeah, moving normally, make a normal move, they can shoot, and then they can move back, I think is what we're going to get. And the more I think about it, the more I think we're going to be able to pick 3 units to do this with every turn. And, you know, basically that's going to be battle focus. Okay, let's go to the stratagems here. So the first one is actually really good, and it's something that the detachment absolutely needs, right? Any armored detachment needs some sort of ability to negate mortal wounds, and this is it, right? Any phase just after a mortal wound is allocated to an Eldari vehicle unit from your army, that's any vehicle unit. Target that vehicle unit. Until the end of the phase, models in your unit have the feel no pain 5+ against mortal wounds. That's great. It's until the end of the phase. So armies like, that are getting a lot of mortal wounds, like Grey Knights, armies like, Thousand Suns, they're just not going to be able to do as much against your vehicles, which is awesome. This is a great stratagem. And you can use it in any phase. So you can use it in the shooting phase, you can use it in the assault phase, or, fight phase, whatever. You can use it whenever you want. So I think this is a really good stratagem, and it's perfect. Swift deployment is interesting. Swift deployment is an interesting stratagem. Your movement phase, 1 Eldari transport unit from your army, so that only means Falcons, Wave Serpents, and Star Weavers. Until the end of the phase, units can disembark from your transport after it advanced. Right? Units that do so count as having made a normal move, cannot declare a charge in the same turn, but otherwise act normally. That's great, right? That's situationally good with things like Wave Serpents, where you want to actually, move your unit forward into a better position to shoot. Sometimes terrain or, enemy models are preventing you from getting somewhere. So being able to advance, re-roll the advance roll because of your detachment bonus, get assault weapons for your transport, and then on top of that, drop your unit off and then be able to, shoot and act normally afterward is awesome. That's a great stratagem. Okay, now we get to the stinkers of the list. And when I say this, I'm just kind of making it in reference to what we already have in Battlehost. So let's take a look at vectored engines, which I thought was going to be a move shoot move when I saw its title, and I thought, awesome, this is going to be great. But then it's not. It actually sucks. So your movement phase just after an Eldari vehicle unit from your army that can fly falls back. So it has to be able to fly. Now, as you guys know, Eldari vehicles are very fragile. When something charges into them, they usually die. So, and also, being able to shoot with the Eldari vehicles sometimes isn't even worth the command points because, who's gonna? There's not a lot of armies out there nowadays that are gonna just throw a unit into combat with an Eldari transport and try to tie it up in combat. It's just not going to happen. Eldari just any fly model can just retreat from combat. Yeah, they can't shoot without the CP, but a lot of times that doesn't matter. This is, helpful maybe on Falcons and stuff like that, if the Falcon even survives. So you target the vehicle model. It has to fly. Until the end of the phase, your unit is eligible to shoot in a turn which it fell back. So this is like a downgraded version of the, feigned retreat stratagem. It's only Eldari vehicle units. In the battle host, it's literally everything, including Eldari vehicles. And this is when I started to think to myself, well, that's just not going to be used all that often, right? So, yeah, it's decent. There's some situations where it'll be useful, I think. But overall, it just kind of gave me a bad vibe going into the other ones. It's not terrible, but it's not that good either. So now we go to the next one, and I think this is probably one of the biggest traps you could ever fall into is using this. So, first of all, let me just point this out. Falcons inherently do not want a deep strike. I'm just going to tell that right now. Eldari vehicles inherently do not want a deep strike. It is a bad move for an Eldari vehicle. There's a couple reasons for this. One, most Eldari vehicles want to be, if they're shooters like Fire Prisms, Night Spinners, Vipers, whatever, they want to be in the backfield supporting the rest of your army. One. If they're a transport, you want to be able to get the unit out within either 6 inches, which is melter range for fire dragons, or be able to charge after charge after disembarking. That's the two things that you want out of a unit like this. You don't really care about being super close to the enemy because you have the range to, be able to deal with them, right? Fire dragons have 12 inches, but if you do put a falcon in reserve, you're going to rapid ingress instead of using this. So this is a command point, so let's just go into it. It's a command point. You use it at the start of your reinforcement step of your movement phase, so the end of your movement phase. One Aeldari unit or vehicle unit from your army that can fly and is in strategic reserve can deep strike within 6 inches, and the unit that gets out of it can also be set up more than 6 inches away from enemy units, but it's not eligible to declare a charge. This is why I think it sucks. If it was eligible to declare a charge after, I would say yes, this has a lot of potential. This is a really good stratagem. It can allow your melee units like Striking Scorpions to just get an almost guaranteed charge on an enemy unit. Because you're not able to charge, you might as well just deep strike normally if you're going to do that, or not at all. Right? And I would even say not at all. You should just deploy normally, get out, use a fate dice at this point to then charge. And that's why I think, again, this is going to be better with battle focus, because a 6-inch deep strike with the ability to move an additional 6 or an additional d6, whatever they decide to do, is going to be way better than just being able to use a fate dice on something like damage or something like that, right? So Cloud Strike is not good. I think the only situation where I could find it being interesting is ironically with Vipers. I think, a Viper is small enough to where it can fit in a corner of a battlefield and score you line breaker. It can score you different objectives and stuff like that. Obviously, I just don't see it in any other scenario being useful on the transports that it speaks about. But yeah, a Viper can use this, and it can score objectives for you in the enemy backfield, and I think that's pretty good. I think there's an argument definitely for that. Vipers are cheap enough, and I think Vipers are actually one of the better units in this detachment anyway. Next is Soul Sight, and this was a real slap in the face to me when I saw this for the first time. And the reason being is because this is a stratagem that the entire battle host army or detachment already gets. So you're paying 1 CP for the honor, for the privilege of being able to reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, and the bonus on this is you get reroll damage, right? But again, with reroll damage, it's like I technically could use a fate dice for that. This stratagem does give you a benefit, but it's just not that great in my opinion. So let's read this. So in your shooting phase, one Eldari vehicle unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. This is actually good on one thing, and I think it's actually ironically good on the D cannon, right? The D cannon wants this, but that's it. So until the end of the phase, each time your unit is selected to shoot, you can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 damage roll made for a model in your unit. And of course, it goes into the fast dice rolling thing that's in the core rules. If you're using fast dice rolling, you can select 1 or more of those rolls to reroll before moving on to the next attack sequence. So that just means you can roll all the dice at the same time using different colored dice for fast rolling, and you can pick which one you reroll. That's all it means, right? Which is fine. That's exactly how it works anyway. Soul Sight is pretty good. It's decent, but it's not as good as just having reroll to hit wound on everything, right? And you're spending a CP to do it. It's only really effective, in my opinion, on a D cannon because you can reroll the wound roll not the wound roll, the damage roll. And as we know, D cannons kind of need a high damage roll to be pretty good. So that's it. That's the only reason I think that's decent. But again, how good are D cannons going to be in a really fast, hard-hitting list when you have nothing to be left back to kind of protect the D cannons from anything? I really don't know, right? All right, let's look at the last stratagem, and this one is I just don't find this that effective. For 1 CP, your opponent's charge phase, just as for an enemy unit is declared a charge, 1 Eldari vehicle unit from your army that can fly. See, if it was just 1 vehicle unit, I would like it better because it could protect your D cannons, right? So like if something tried to make a charge at a deep strike against a D cannon, you could say, nope, +2 to charge rolls, you're not going to make that charge. That'd be good. It's only those with fly. So, again, Wave Serpents, Vipers, Falcons, Fire Prisms, all that stuff. So until the end of the phase, subtract 2 from charge rolls made for that enemy unit. With all the stuff we have seen about, coming out of Deep Strike, getting a +2 to charge, or, getting those kind of stratagems activated, I just don't think this is that good. This kind of just forces your opponent to, use that stratagem, to use whatever stratagem they have to give themselves a bonus to their charge roll, or to re-roll their charge roll, or anything like that. And it's just not super good. So I don't really like that one personally. So what do I think about this detachment overall? Well, it's definitely not as good as Warhost, that's for sure. I think competitively speaking, it's just miles off. There's no way you can compare them at the moment. I think as soon as we get the codex and we have more movement shenanigans that we can layer on top of this detachment with our units, and also with things like battle focus, I think this detachment is flipped on its head. I think it becomes really good, really interesting, and actually effective. A lot of people are saying that this detachment is the worst in the game. I don't think it's the worst in the game at all. I think Thousand Suns are way worse than this. I think it's just we're used to having a lot of rerolls, right? Now we have one pretty awful stratagem in Cloud Strike, but that's only good with the Viper. So what I think you do here is you build an army that can benefit off of scoring a lot of objectives, that has tons of vehicles. And again, this is more of a spam type list. You're going to spam vehicles, you're going to spam Wave Serpents, you're going to spam Corsairs to give them scout, right? You're going to make this army as mobile and as fast as possible so that you can get to the midboard, move block your enemy out of the midboard, and then you're going to use different things to score objectives, like Cloud Strike is going to be used with a Viper to score objectives, right? So I think that's where you're going with this. This detachment has 0 synergy with most units that are going to be in transports. Cloud Strike doesn't do anything for Falcons. Swift deployment, I think, is really good for a Falcon unit of Fire Dragons, because you could advance with the Falcon up, you could use a Fate Dice to go 6 inches on the advance 20 inches, and then you can dump the Fire Dragons out 3 inches, and then they can be within, like, super melter range of something, or something like that. That's the only thing. So I think this is a very fast, very aggressive style list that definitely wants to go first. You want to push up the board as fast as possible, and then you want Falcons with Fire Dragons to kind of clean up any hard targets that your other units can't deal with. I think this is really what the army wants to do. Is this super effective? Is this meta breaking? Is this really interesting and good? Well, honestly, no. I don't think it's meta, or it's never going to be meta until maybe the codex comes out and we see what happens with battle focus. I think battle focus is more interesting than something like, Strands of Fate with this type of army. But, it is decent. I definitely think that there's some play with this. I don't, again, it's not as good as Battle Host, but that doesn't matter. It's a different way to play Aeldari. So I think the best way to play this list, honestly, even though some of the stratagems are a little bit, honestly, a little bit iffy. I mean, anti-grav repulsion is probably, in my opinion, one of the worst ones. And then Cloud Strike, by the way, the only reason I think Cloud Strike is any good is because you could use it on a Viper. And if you use it on a Viper, the funny thing that happens in that case is you can actually score a bunch of secondary points if you draw the right secondaries. But it's very dependent, right? It's very dependent on what secondaries you draw. So that is kind of a downside to that one. But, layered wards, swift deployment, they all have, good stuff about them that's decent. That's true. That's for sure. The detachment ability is good. Giving everything assault is decent. So now all of your shuriken cannons can advance and fire. All of your bright lances can advance and fire. I think you definitely want things with scout like warwalkers. I think warwalkers, despite not getting the reroll to hit and wound, are good in this type of list because you can threaten more stuff in the enemy backfield. Again, this is an alpha strike style Aeldari list. You want to advance as fast as possible into the midboard. You want to control the midboard right away. You want to use warwalkers to move block and also to shoot and cripple enemy units. And because you have things like Guiding Presence, and you have things like the Spirit Stone of Releth, that can really help you be able to be safer in the midboard. And actually the +1 to hit is good on primarily Warwalkers, because you definitely need something on those Warwalkers turn 1 to make sure they hit. And I think that's going to be, you're going to have to target a Aeldari vehicle, which is going to be a Warwalker. I don't think support weapons are that good for that kind of thing. If you're already trying to dominate the midboard and you have a bunch of Serpents and Falcons set up, your opponent's probably not going to give you that many opportunities to use the D-Cannon, so maybe that's not a great unit. I think Guardian Defenders are a good unit for this army to just kind of sit in the backfield and generate fate dice for you so that you can, have more fate dice in your list for armor saves, invul saves, and stuff like that. Guileful Strategist I don't see as that great of an ability, but you can use Infiltrate with it, so you can definitely reposition things like Rangers and stuff like that after you know where your opponent's deployed fully. So that could be just a 15-point bonus thing that you have in your list. So after looking at this and diving deeper into it, again, it's not the best detachment. I think that obviously having things like Fire and Fade and Phantasm and, Feigned Retreat and Matchless Agility, I think all those things are just better in general for a vast majority of lists. But if you want to hyper focus into vehicles and you want to hyper focus into it, I think this might have some better objective play than Battle Host. Anyway, that's what I got for this detachment. That's what I think. So I'm going to make a list for it tomorrow and tell you guys what I think about the specifics. And I might even show you guys some strategies on Tabletop Simulator as to how to play this list on the battlefield. I think it's interesting. I just, I'm not overly impressed by it. Let's just say that. And I think a lot of Aeldari players feel the same way. But I don't think it's terrible. I think it's going to be really good when the codex comes out. But right now, it just feels like it doesn't have quite enough teeth to be able to, kind of survive in this meta. And especially because we got our hopes up with Shatter, Star Shield Arsenal, or whatever they're called, Star Shatter Arsenal from the Necrons, and the Admech detachment looked really good. And we saw all these like really powerful detachments come out. And then the Aeldari one comes out and we're like, oh, Wave Serpents are a little bit better. Falcons are a little bit better. But I think there's a little more to it. I think Aeldari are a little bit harder to crack anyway. Okay, so here's that detachment. Again, not the best, but definitely not the worst. And then we have the Dark Eldar one, Reaper's Wager. This is a Harlequin and Dark Eldar, basically collaboration, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a work of art, in my opinion. It's Da Vinci, Van Gogh, fuck them. They have nothing on this. Whoever wrote this is a true artist. So first of all, let's read the detachment rule, which may not seem that good at first, but you start to realize how good it is once you start to realize the implications of it, right? With the different units that you can take. Callous competition. So at the start of the battle, Druhkari units from your army are quote-unquote winning the wager. So to give you guys an example, it's like a competition between Harlequins and Dark Eldar. They're like trying to compete over who's better, right? So if units are winning the wager, they do not get anything, right? They don't get any bonus. But if you're losing the wager, right? So it says each time a Druhkari unit from your army destroys an enemy unit, Druhkari units from your army are winning the wager. So it's like you switch between winning and losing the wager. Harlequins, same thing, right? If they destroy a unit, they are currently winning the wager. Okay. While Druhkari units from your army are winning the wager, Harlequin units from your army are losing the wager. It's a lot of word slop, word salad right here. It just basically means your Druhkari units are going to be either getting no benefit if they're winning, and if they're losing, and if any of them are losing, or the Harlequins units are losing the wager. Each time a model from your army makes an attack, if that model's unit is losing the wager, reroll a hit roll of 1 and a wound roll of 1. And that's all hit rolls and all wound rolls. It's not just one, because it doesn't say a single, right? Now, if we go back to the other thing right here, I just want to show you guys what I mean by this, right? If we go to Soul Sight, the wording on this, right, it says you can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 damage roll. So anytime it says can reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1, it means any. It means any dice. So all of a sudden, you have some pretty powerful damage coming out of your units. That's really good. Dark Eldar can already reroll hits with pain tokens. So this rule is not as good on Dark Eldar units, but it's really good on Eldar units, especially Harlequins, because it's basically army-wide. You can take up to half of your units as Harlequins. Rerolls hits, rerolls wounds. Okay. Especially if you consider you're getting +1 to wound on charge, ladies and gentlemen. So let's take a look at the Harlequins that you can take. You can take up to 1,000 points in a Strike Force game, which is more than normal. Usually you can only take 500, and this is doubled. No Harlequin models from your army can be your Warlord, but that doesn't matter. Let's look at the enhancements. There's some really good ones, guys. We have Arc Raider, 15 points. Harlequin or Druhkari model only. In the declare battle formation step, if the bearer starts the battle embarked within a dedicated transport, which it will, Dark Eldar and Harlequins love their dedicated transports, that dedicated transport has the Scout's 9 ability. Wow. So, either your Raider, your Venom, or your Starweaver gets Scout's 9. That is incredible for only 15 points. That's really good, guys. That's going to set the tempo of most games, right? Especially if it's a powerful unit like Archon with Incubi. I know that's a little bit expensive, but in this detachment, it's definitely worth it, especially if the Druhkari are losing the wager, getting rerolls of 1s, right? Which they'll get all rerolls to hit wound anyway. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter for them, but it would matter for Harlequins, right? But Scout's 9 is just good. Webway Walker is, honestly, I don't think a good one, and it's basically just your unit gets Deep Strike, and you can reroll the charge roll if you're losing the wager. I think that's stupid. I think rerolling a charge roll of 9, you can already do that with a pain token, or you can do that with a command, reroll if you really need it. You're not going to be deep striking your Harlequin units, and your Druhkari units can already reroll a charge roll. I don't know. I don't think this is that good. I think, obviously, if you have extra points, it's good to put on something, but I would definitely put it on a Harlequin unit to reroll the charge roll, and not a Druhkari unit that can just use a pain token. But we have other better detachments we can use, right? We have Reaper's Cowl. This is really good. Harlequin model only. Model in the Bearer's unit have stealth and infiltrators. Man. So talk about the Shadowseer potentially being good in this detachment. I was talking so much crap about the Shadowseer, but if you can infiltrate a Shadowseer unit up the board, might actually be okay. I mean, I don't think it's like super good, don't get me wrong, but it's decent, right? And I think it's actually probably better, believe it or not, on a Death Jester or a not the Solitaire. You can't do it on the Solitaire, but a Death Jester. I think it's pretty decent. Is it worth 25 points? I don't think it's worth 25 points. I would probably put it on, a small unit of Quins or something like that, with a Troop Master perhaps. But I think, personally, I would want to put them in transports. It's a cool idea, though, and it might have some play. You have Conductor of Torment for 20 points. This is actually just a requirement, in my opinion, for making sure that you can be in the right phase at the right time. So, in your command phase, you can do one of the following. If your Druhkari units are currently losing the wager, which they should be doing at this point, you can gain 1 pain token, and if you do, they're now winning the wager, which will switch it over to your Quinn units. So your Quinn units in the shooting phase are going to be able to reroll hit rolls of 1, reroll wound rolls of 1. That's going to be key to one of the absolutely most brutal and perhaps even broken strategies I'm going to talk about in just a second. However, if your Druhkari units are currently winning the wager, you can discard a pain token, and if you do, the Harlequin units are now winning the wager. So this is a great way to just gain pain tokens throughout the battle, and it also manages your losing or winning the wager. And I think you definitely want to spend 20 points on this. I think you definitely want to spend 15 points on Arc Raider. You might want to make your units infiltrate and stealth, but maybe not. Just depends. Now let's look at the stratagems. Now before we get into them, let me just tell you guys, they are some of the best stratagems I've seen in the entire game for this style of play. They're absolutely brilliant, and whoever designed them deserves a promotion. They deserve to become the CEO of GW. So, Malicious Frenzy is our first one, and this makes Death Jesters and Dark Eldar worth taking. And it is so good that I think Death Jesters actually just become auto-include in this army. So check this out. Your shooting or the fight phase. So it can actually be used in both, and you should be using it probably in both phases throughout the game. One Druhkari or Harlequin unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase, select lethal hits or sustained hits 1 until the end of the phase. Weapons equipped by your models in the unit have the selected ability. Wow. Imagine this. A Death Jester rerolling 1s to hit rerolling ones to wound with lethal hits, or if you want to choose a different ability, like let's say you want to use precision with your Death Jester, you can now have precision with sustained hits 1, and you can be fishing for 6s because you get rerolls of hits of 1 and you're hitting on 2+. And then when you're rolling to wound, you have dev wounds, so you're actually wounding on 3s, but you're getting to reroll your 1s and possibly be able to reroll those into 6s. That is incredible. That's really good, guys. I know they don't have fate dice in this army, but you get to reroll the hit roll, and that's really good, and you don't have to spend any extra points on enhancements, which means your Death Jester is just a base 90 points. I think that's really strong. That's really good. And here's the other part about it. You can take multiple Jesters. So, yeah, you don't get to use the, sustained hits 3 ability that they have, or the precision ability, but it's still pretty good to have, just because you're rerolling 1s to hit, rerolling 1s to wound. I would probably say that you probably should maybe only use 1 or 2 Death Jesters in your army in this particular build, but having one of them constantly have lethal hits is really strong, on top of rerolls 1 and rerolls 1 to wound. Fateful Roll is also really good. Now, it's really good because this is fights on death. If you are losing the wager, you get +1 to the fights on death. So it's fights on death on a 4+, but it's 3+ if you're losing the wager. This is amazing. So imagine a unit charging in, dealing a bunch of damage, not quite killing the enemy unit, but dealing a ton of damage to it, right? So like, let's say a unit of Incubi with Archon, who is currently losing the wager. In your shooting phase, your Quins kill something, so they're now winning. Your Druhkari are now losing. Your Druhkari charge in, they're losing the wager, so they get the +1, and they kill everything except the character in the unit, right? Now, the character strikes back and kills like 3 or 4 Incubi. On a 3+, now you're fighting back with those Incubi. That's really strong. You may end up actually killing the unit because of this stratagem. So it's a really good strat. I really like it. It's only 1 CP. If you set things up right, you're going to be fighting on death on a 3-up. That's good. Murderer Circus is pretty decent. It's not bad. Fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, you can choose a Druhkari or Harlequin unit. It's -1 to hit, essentially. Which is good. That's like lightning fast reactions for combat. It's not bad. You're not going to be using it that much, but it could save you in some situations, especially when you're trying to vie for control over an objective against a kind of a trashier unit. Then we have Shorten the Odds. This is fantastic. Your movement phase, just after a Druhkari unit or Harlequins unit from your army has advanced. You target that unit, and it is now eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced. Wow. Amazing. You can have a Harlequin unit, of course, advance forward and charge something. You do not need a Shadow Seer anymore for that, which is good. So that's really powerful. Or it's a Druhkari unit that can advance and charge out of a transport, right? You can get out 3 inches, move, advance, and charge something. That's perfect. Now, this is normally not that good just by itself, right? Because people can overwatch you, and you're super, obviously vulnerable to overwatch. In comes the next stratagem. Your movement phase or charge phase, just after a Druhkari or Harlequins unit from your army is selected to make a normal move, advance, or fallback move, is set up on the battlefield or declares a charge. You target that unit cannot use the fire over. So it's enemy units, right? So until the end of the turn, enemy units cannot use the fire overwatch stratagem to shoot at your unit. And the great thing about this is, guys, just use it in your movement phase, probably. Because then not only can they not overwatch you in the shooting phase, or in the movement phase, but they can't fire overwatch in the charge phase as well, because it says until the end of the turn. Boom. That is perfect for 1 CP. That's great. Makes your whole unit invulnerable to overwatch. And with all the flamers that we've seen just be introduced and get stronger, we have Infernus Marines getting stronger. Imperial Guard are going to get a bunch of flamer type units, heavy flamers. This is going to be absolutely amazing for just shredding right through their lines and getting right into the thick of it. And especially when you can combine that with Shorten the Odds, which is an advance in charge. That's perfect. Then lastly, we have a kind of a weird one that I don't think should be 2 CP. I think maybe even that was just a mistake. It should be 1 CP. But basically, happens in your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move, and it has to be within 9 inches of that unit, Druhkari infantry or Harlequins infantry unit. Your unit can make a normal move of up to d6. So it's kind of like Phantasm. It's a conditional Phantasm. And that's exactly what it is. It's a conditional Phantasm, but if your unit is currently losing the wager, it can make a normal move of up to 6 instead. This can be very good. I just don't think it's worth 2 CP in an army that doesn't really generate CP, right? We don't have an Autarch. We don't have a model that realistically generates any CP. So I think Dance Macabre is actually kind of, it's trash. I think it's just not going to be used that much. It looks good on paper, but in reality, it's just not a good ability. I think it's really good, though, on things perhaps like the Death Jester, which you would want to actually, and at that point, later in the game, you probably are losing in the movement phase with the Harlequins. You're probably losing the wager. And at that point, yeah, you can move up to 6 inches with the Jester. It's just kind of expensive. I don't think they should have made it that expensive to use. So, what do I think about this detachment? Well, I think it basically makes all the Harlequin units that were total trash before, like the Shadowseer, and also in Dark Eldar specifically, the Death Jester, which was absolute trash in a Dark Eldar list, actually makes them pretty good. The Shadowseer is usable. I don't think it's the best, but it's usable. I think the Death Jester is actually really good in the Dark Eldar. It's probably not as good as in the Eldar detachment, but it's pretty close. Especially if you can give it lethal hits. That's awesome. Lethal hits combined with rerolls 1s to hit, rerolls 1s to wound, and, also on top of his ability normally. Also, the other thing about this, and I didn't say this before, but the Death Jester, what does the Death Jester do? Force Battle Shock tests. What generates pain tokens? Failed Battle Shock. So, I mean, again, having 1 or 2 of these in your army is definitely a good idea. I would even go so far as to say you'll probably want a couple of them. At least I'm going to put a couple of them in the army just because, the Dark Eldar lack good lone ops, and this makes it so that one lone op can, perform some objectives, but also have some decent damage as well at the same time. So I really like this. Really, absolutely love this. The other cool thing is if you are in the same unit as an Arc Raider, so you could technically have something in a Raider, give it Scout 9, and then you could just put, well, no, you probably can't put yeah, never mind. I don't think you can put you can't put Harlequins units in Raiders and stuff like that, but that Scout 9 is not just limited to the unit, it's the transport. So you could have a unit of 5 Quins and a Death Jester in there. Or you could just have a simple Death Jester in there with the Arc Raider enhancement with Scout 9, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. I don't think it's super powerful or anything, but I think that's interesting, right? So yeah, I think these are really cool. I think these are really cool enhancements for the most part. I think the ability itself is really good. And it just looks like overall a really fun, interesting detachment that it's almost like kind of like a performance itself. It feels like during the battle you are performing some sort of dance with your units. You're going back and forth between, winning and losing the wager. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. I definitely want to get more into this. I'm going to build a list for it again, just like the Aeldari one, and have that for you tomorrow at some point. Oh, I don't even get me started about this. It's just when I saw this and I started reading it, at first I wasn't convinced, but then I saw the stratagems, I saw the enhancements, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, right? These are really amazing stratagems and enhancements. So, yeah, basically, I'm very excited to actually try this army. Hopefully, maybe I'll get a few games in or something like that within the next couple of weeks with this. I'll probably have to proxy some Dark Eldar units, but that's okay. And, I'm probably going to, maybe I'm even going to try to get a game on Tabletop Sim about it. And maybe I'll even show you guys on the channel, how this army would run without having to use cardboard in an actual game. So, yeah, I think it's really cool. Let me know what you guys think, though, about this detachment. I personally think it's one of the best in the game. And I say that in just with full chest because I think the synergies and the, kind of coolness factor of the detachment. It's like, here's the thing. It's really cool and it's good. I mean, that's awesome, right? It's always cool to have something that's really good and also really cool at the same time. So that's all. That's so cool. I think this is such a cool detachment. Wow. Yeah. And hey, you know what the cool thing about this detachment is also? It's not locked out of Taloses and Chronoses, so you can take Talos, you can take Chronos with this, so it's just a good time. I mean, could you imagine, guys, I just realized something. Your Talos now have advance and charge with the stratagem. Your movement phase just after a Druhkari or Harlequins unit from your army has advanced. It's not Druhkari infantry or Harlequin infantry. It's just Druhkari unit. So you could advance and charge with your Talos. You could advance and charge with your grotesques if grotesques are your thing. Again, grotesques, I think they suck personally, but advance and charge grotesques, two thumbs up. That's kind of cool, right? Advance and charge on Harlequins is obviously also awesome. And here's the thing too, actually what's funny about this ability, this can't be overwatched ability also applies to just Drukhari or Harlequin unit. That applies to vehicles. That applies to basically everything in your army that can exist. Doesn't get to be overwatched. Talos. Oh, you have a unit that can just wipe my Talos off the board with Overwatch. Nope. CP, goodbye. Right? Super cool. Fateful Roll, Attack on Death is not limited to infantry. The only thing that's limited to infantry is the Dance Macabre, which honestly kind of sucks anyway. Whew. Oh, man. Okay. So that's going to be really good, guys. Oh, I didn't even mention this, but Malicious Frenzy, right? Lethal hits or sustained hits 1 on things like Talos is just going to be amazing. Could you imagine sustained hits 1 re-rolling hits with haywire weapons? Yes, please. Yes, please give me more sustained hits 1 on haywire blasters. They're also re-rolling to wound because they're twin linked. Or Scourges. I mean, it kind of makes sense why Scourges got increased in points, guys. Remember, they got increased by 10 points? Now it makes sense because of this detachment. Because sustained hits 1 on Dark Lances, guys. That's why. Rerolling hits with sustained hits 1 on Dark Lances. Holy crap. Or on Haywires. Whew. Or, I mean, lethal hits is still good, right? I mean, you could still do lethal hits is a great ability. Yeah, there's just a lot of potential here. I'm really happy to see this. I'm really happy to see this. So yeah, this is one of the absolute best detachments, I think, in the entire Grotsmas lineup. I'm not saying that because I'm a shill for Dark Eldar and Harlequins and Eldar stuff. I really do think it's one of the best. Just like I don't think the Eldar one is that good without the codex. I think that this one is probably the best Druhkari detachment of the three. I think it's better than Sky Splinter. I'm just telling you guys right now. I don't know if it's more competitive, but I have it in my mind that it is with the right, player behind it. I think it's more fun than Sky Splinter. It's definitely more fun. It's definitely better than Real Space Raid. I'll tell you that right now. Super good. And actually, I want to check something out real quick because in Real Space Raid, Chronoses and Taloses get -1 to wound. What about? Okay, this is perfect, right? Fight phase -1 to hit. -1 to hit for your Talos in the fight phase, Murderous Circus. So it's just great. I mean, everything works in this army. Everything is good in this army. There's not a single unit that's not good, which is also pretty amazing. I mean, think about a beast pack being able to scout up and then advance and charge. Oh, I'm sorry, your Land Raider Redeemer cannot shoot at my Beast Pack. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, my Beast Pack is going to get lethal hits or sustained hits 1 on everything. It's also going to be able to reroll charge rolls because that's the natural ability of the unit. And because maybe I'm losing the wager, I get, rerolls of 1 to hit and rerolls of 1 to wound. I'm sorry. I'm just really happy about this detachment. Whoever invented it, whoever created it and wrote it, is an absolute Giga Chad. And yeah, it's going to be fun to see. I'd love to see a player like Scary run this in a battle report or a competitive tournament. I'd really love to just see it just absolutely dance on the graves of everybody. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I know some people are going to hate the armored spearhead or the armored warhost or whatever that the Eldari got. I totally get that. Is again, it's not as good as the battle host in general, I think, for a lot of units. But if you want to just run vehicles, I think there's an argument to be had that it's good. It's kind of like Tyranids. It's kind of like Tyranids got a detachment that was good for warriors, but not really for anything else. Like, why would you run anything else in that list except maybe a hive tyrant and gargoyles? So yeah, it's kind of like one of those things, right? And that's why I think the Aeldari one is. I think they really just wanted to sell Wave Serpents. They wanted to sell, Eldar vehicles that maybe haven't been selling that well, right? Before the new codex comes out. So, anyway, so that's what I got for today. Awesome detachment. Reaper's Wagers is really cool name, too. It's not some dumb name like, oh my god. I mean, guys, the Thousand Suns detachment. I mean, if you think the Aeldari Armored one is bad, remember the Thousand Suns. And feel sorry for Thousand Suns players and be like, I'm sorry. Because you're probably not going to get a codex for a while, so you're stuck with that garbage for, until you get a codex. Alright guys, that's going to be for today. I'm sorry for going on forever about this. I'm just really excited for it. It looks really fun. The Dark Eldar one looks absolutely amazing, best in the game. The Eldar one looks okay, and I think there's some cool stuff you can do with it. But that's all I got for today. If you are interested in joining the Discord, sign up for a Patreon free trial. It's totally free. You can talk to me, you can talk to other people on our Discord. It's a really great community. We love to talk about strategies and painting and tactics and all that. It's a really fun place to be. And if you want to grab some Eldar inspired apparel on the channel store page, maybe for a Christmas gift or something like that, or to troll your buddies, which is always fun, right? I've actually purchased a couple things just to give to other people in my gaming group just to troll the hell out of them. Give them like, Reaper's Life or something. Big Reaper Energy is a classic. I have a a shirt with a Reaper launcher on it. Says Big Reaper Energy. Give that to one of your friends. That's going to be hilarious. And, a couple of other ones. I have Santa Eldrad and Santa Death Jester on there for Christmas. So, anyway, take a look at that. And also, if you want to grab some discounted Eldar minis on Amazon, the Combat Patrols are back on Amazon. They're 120 bucks. You get a discount on them, obviously, from Games Workshop prices, and you get to support the channel a little bit at the same time if you buy one of those Combat Patrols on Amazon. So I'll leave the affiliate link in the description for that also. Okay, everybody, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you guys next time. Really excited to play these, and I'll see you later. Peace out.